All right, let's do a little time travel. The date is January 13th, 2026. We're looking back over the last 2 years of platform engineering, and we're doing it with data from over 500 practitioners. We're about to see exactly why some companies just took off while others got left in the dust. Let's dive in.
So this is where things were at heading into 2025. This wasn't just another year of, slow and steady progress. No, this was a real turning point. It was the exact moment that, as the data shows, literally split the industry in two. The decisions made right then, well, they determined everything that came after. And that's really the big question we're going to tackle here, right? We're going to unpack the patterns, the major catalysts, and the very specific choices that decided who won and who lost. And the best part? The answers are all right here in the data. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the 2025 baseline to see where everyone started. Then, we get to the juicy part, the great bimodal split, how the whole field just fractured. We'll dig into the two huge forces that caused it, the AI mandate and platform industrialization. And then we'll wrap up with the 2026 maturity roadmap that the winners actually used. Okay, so first things first, let's set the stage. To really get why this split happened, we have to go back to early 2025 and look at the problems everybody was dealing with. And believe me, the cracks were already showing. And right away, you can see the biggest problem of them all. Nearly a third of all platform teams were flying completely blind. No success metrics, nothing. I mean, how can you possibly justify your existence if you can't even measure your impact? This was a massive, massive problem right from the start. But, it gets even messier than that. Because inside that 70% of teams who swore they were measuring success, something else was going on. There was this hidden problem, a weird discrepancy that showed just how little visibility people really had. They actually had a name for it, the Delta of Liars. It's basically that 5% of teams who said, oh yeah, we measure success, but when you ask them if their metrics had actually gotten any better, crickets. It just shows the huge difference between saying you're data-driven and, actually being data-driven. And of course, this lack of visibility wasn't just in the metrics. It was everywhere. Nearly half of all teams were just stuck fighting fires, totally reactive. A shocking 13%. Can you believe that? Were basically unfunded passion projects. And look at adoption. More than a third of platforms had to be forced on developers. Why? Because they weren't good enough to be adopted on their own. The whole thing was built on shaky ground. So with a foundation that's shaky, what do you think happened next? The industry didn't just get a little bit better over time. Nope. It completely fractured. It split into two totally separate groups, moving at wildly different speeds. This is the real story of 2025 and 2026. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got the fast movers. We're talking about roughly 35% of teams proving their value in less than 6 months and using that data to get real funding. On the other side, you've got the slow movers. That's almost 41% of teams who couldn't show any value after a whole year. They were stuck, and their platforms were in real danger of just getting shut down. The gap was just enormous. So what was the spark? What made this gap turn into a chasm so fast? Well, the first major force was the AI mandate. All of a sudden, AI wasn't a nice-to-have. It wasn't some future thing to worry about. It was a do-it-now requirement for every single platform team, whether they were ready or not. I mean, just look at these numbers. They're staggering. 94%, almost everyone, saw AI as critical. 86% said their platform was essential for making AI happen. But here's the kicker, the real problem. 57%, more than half, admitted they had a major skills gap. So you have this insane pressure to deliver on AI, but you don't have the people who know how to do it. That pressure is what really separated the winners from the losers. And it wasn't a simple challenge either. It was a two-front war, really. To be successful, you had to solve two problems at the same time. First, you had to build AI-powered platforms, using AI to make your own developers faster and smarter. And second, you had to build platforms for AI, giving your data scientists the infrastructure they needed to run their ML models. You had to do both. And this is maybe the most important takeaway of all. AI wasn't some kind of magic wand you could wave to fix your problems. It was an accelerant, a massive one. For teams with mature platforms, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire. Everything got better, faster. But for those immature platforms, AI just took all their existing dysfunction and amplified it, making everything so much worse. All right, so the second huge catalyst was this fundamental shift in thinking, a whole new philosophy for how platforms should even be built. The industry basically moved away from this handmade artisanal approach to a standardized industrial model. Think craftsman to assembly line.
And at the core of this whole thing was this idea of shifting down. For years, all we heard about was shifting left, right? Which, let's be honest, usually just meant dumping more work and cognitive load onto developers. Shifting down was the real game changer. It was about embedding capabilities like security and observability directly into the platform itself, so the toil just disappears for developers. This shift really was the end of an era. The age of artisan engineering, the whole 10x engineer myth, the reliance on individual heroes and manual processes, that was over. The new game was all about the effectiveness of the platform, built from standardized parts that just worked. It wasn't about one superstar, it was about the power of the system.
And I love this metaphor from the source because it's just perfect. Organizations that tried to stick with the old, artisanal way of doing things found themselves in a ridiculous position. It was like being a custom furniture maker with hand tools trying to compete with IKEA. I mean, come on, you just can't win that fight. So, how did the winners do it? How did they pull so far ahead? Well, it wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. The data laid out a clear playbook, a proven strategy that the fast-moving, mature organizations all followed to win. And the playbook had 5 super clear steps. 1. You gotta start with measurement. Use frameworks like Dora or Space to prove your ROI. 2. Fix your adoption problem. Stop forcing it on people and build something they actually want to use. 3. Treat the platform like a product and use data to drive your funding. 4. You had to execute on that dual AI mandate. And 5, you had to aggressively upskill your people to close that huge 57% skills gap. That was the path. Success also meant that the teams themselves had to change. I mean, the old model, where over 63% of teams had no dedicated product management, that just wasn't going to fly anymore. Dedicated platform product managers became the norm. And that generic platform engineer title, it split into all these specialized roles for DevOps, for security, for AI. The structure had to follow the strategy. And let's talk about the money, because this is huge. Trying to build a real enterprise-grade platform for less than $1 million, that was just setting yourself up to fail. The winners knew this. They put their money where their mouth was. They doubled their budgets and invested a serious $5 to $10 million to do it right. So, looking back from where we are now in 2026, it's all so obvious, isn't it? The data showed exactly what needed to happen. The patterns, the roadmap, it was all there for anyone who was willing to look. The path to maturity was never a secret. It was right there in the data. It was always a choice. And so the only question that's left, the one you have to ask yourself, is, the data showed the path. Did your organization walk it?